Good morning. Welcome back out to Patman Garage. If you haven't seen the Coyote Swap Mustang, we're coming along really nicely with it. I'm going to attempt to connect the Coyote tach signal to the original Mustang PCM so it will be happy and show it on the gauge. So I have no idea what that's going to look like, but we'll find out and see if I'm lucky or not. So I have got the 15 diagram, Gen 2 diagram pulled up, and looking at crank position sensor first is my first test, and then I've got the Mustang diagram pulled up over here. So I'm going to try to piggyback those signals together and see what we get. I got my 4.6 engine harness laid out, and I'm not 100% sure which connector I'm looking for. I think it's this one. So I've got my voltmeter set up in ohms on the scale, and this particular one also has a, if you look up here in this top corner, has a sound feature. So when I, let's see if I can do this while still holding the camera. If I hit the meter on the right pin, it connects a loop through it, and it'll still give me a live ohm reading, but it gives me the sound, which is nice to know. That it just makes it easier to pick up the so I'm not having to stare at the gauge the whole time. So this is my crank signal wire, so I can now cut this guy. Then we should be able to plug this into the factory PCM on the 4.6 side, and then if I connect these two wires to the Coyote side of the crank sensor, then hopefully we'll get a tach reading. We'll see how this goes. Alright, so check this out. I took apart that connector, or took apart the wiring for the Mach1 4.6 side on that crank sensor, and this is a really good example of why you don't always trust wire colors. Alright, so we had identified this as the connector we were after, and the diagram shows it as a dark blue with a gray wire, but they're both black coming out of the connector until you get into where the wrapping was, and it's no longer oil soaked, no longer heat soaked as well, and you can actually see the blue and the gray coloring now, but these are like legit black and not like just like there's nothing coming off of them. They're just so black looking. But anyways, these are our two wires. We're going to cut the pigtail off of it, and we're going to piggyback with some jumper wires for some testing purposes and see what we get. Alright, so if everything works, I got jumper harness connected, but if everything works like it's supposed to, then we'll get a tach signal out of the cluster here. Alright, so now that that works, I'm going to show you a little bit more in detail exactly what wires I'm picking up and what their colors and pin locations and all that is. That way this can be a more thorough write-up and not just a, hey, I'm going to try some stuff. So we're going to jump into the specifics, and then we'll go from there with further integrations. Alright, so more specifically here's my notes. My crankshaft position positive is pin 21. This is on the 4.6 side, and the color is dark blue. Crankshaft negative is pin 22. That is a gray wire. Those are the two that I showed you on this connector here, where they were black. So that is that side of that wiring. And then on the Gen 2, this is a Mustang harness, but it's the same on the F-150 harness. I'm using an F-150 diagram. The crankshaft positive is pin 70, yellow with a purple stripe, and crank negative is pin 69, nice, and it is a green with a brown stripe. So on the, I showed you this wire, so I should be able to just directly connect these on the PCM side. The only thing I had to do is pull off this top hat of the connector, which is here, and it sits like this. So there's little tabs, 4 little tabs, one here, one over here, and one over here, that you can kind of get to from the side access with a little pocket screwdriver. You can pop this guy off. There's also tape wrapping here and wrapping the harness up. So we'll have to put all that back in whenever we finally finish this thing up. So that's kind of the rough estimates here. The 69 and 70 are on this back side or front side, whatever you want to call it. This connector is numbered really weird. I'm gonna see if I can find you a diagram of what that connector looks like, but basically there's like rows of little pins that go something like 1 to 18, and then 19 to 36, and then so on and so forth. And then there's like a second bank of bigger pins on the bottom, which are numbered in a different section. So it's just kind of goofy. So like I said, I'm gonna try to find you a diagram for that one. But yeah, so crank signal is working, and we're gonna work on trying to get AC happy. So I did some looking at diagrams last night, and originally when I installed the 4.6 compressor on the harness, or on the engine, I cut the connector off of the 4.6 engine harness so I could have it plugged in. Well, after looking at the diagrams, I really think that the Mach 1 is capable of running everything on its own, because we didn't change anything on that. So I may, as an experiment, I may reconnect my 2 wires and see if we can get that clutch to engage like it's intended. Unfortunately, we don't have refrigerant in the car, so I can't really test that right now. But I think for purposes of cleaning up the harness, I'm going to keep my AC wiring intact on the 4.6 harness, and then we can kind of address that once we get refrigerant put in and all that. But this will be, I don't want to delete those wires and then end up regretting that later. So we'll hang on to those for right now, and when we're cleaning up this harness, we'll keep them in place, and it'll make a little more sense once we actually attempt. So that's exciting. That's one step closer, and we're, like I said, we're gonna get this harness cleaned up and fully integrated and tucked, because it's gonna. The goal is to make it look as factory as possible in the engine bay as well. So we're gonna get on wrapping that part of that up now.